You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Today's episode is a unique one. I'll be honest with you, this is the first time I've had a guest make it on the show like this. So as you might know, being the number one show in MedTech, which is true based on downloads and reviews and content quality and volume, we are the number one show in the industry. We get a lot of requests, and I can't tell you how many people blow up my inbox on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Some of you guys find some of my like company emails that I have no idea. Like, somebody found my accounting email. I have no idea how you found that, and pitch people, right? And so of course it's tough for me to decide who to have on the show, etc. I have never, in the entirety of having the show, where we're starting our third year, had somebody pitch their father. So Sean O'Neill sent me a message on Instagram and said, hey, been following your show. I really love it a lot. I know my dad's a fan of your show. I really think you should have my dad on. And he had a, sort of a pitch as to why he should be on the show. And me being a father, that really touched me, because I said, well, this guy did something right. If his grown son, like Sean's not a kid, he's a grown man now, respects and admires his father enough that he would cold outreach and pitch him coming on the show. And so, of course, I wanted to meet his father. So Tom and I, jumped on a Zoom, and I should have recorded that as an episode, because we spent an hour almost just, sharing stories and ideas and everything, really seeing eye to eye on a lot of things. And so Tom O'Neill is the president and CEO and board member at Cognivue, which is a really interesting company. Essentially what Cognivue is it's a risk assessment test that identifies changes in cognitive function that could be indicative of early dementia for Alzheimer's disease. It's the world's first FDA-cleared computerized test of cognitive function. Prior to that, he's had an illustrious career in the medical device world. He was president of North American commercial operations at Keygen. He was division president at Hologic. He was also at Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, which is now a Carlyle company, and really started his career over at Bausch & Lomb, where he actually, I believe he was the manager of a really well-known biotech CEO, Mark McKenna, who had a phenomenal exit at Prometheus for $10.7 billion. By the way, Mark is coming on the show to share that story. And so Tom's just got a phenomenal history, great stories about what it means to be a med device leader and, navigate, through this world. But also I got to say, like, he's one of my favorite guests, because he's somebody that through the podcast has become a good friend of mine. For JP Morgan Healthcare Week, he actually invited me out and saw if I would like to fly in a day early just to go to dinner with him and Mark and another friend. And we had such a great time. And so I'm happy that Tom and I have become friends, and I think you're going to love this episode. And definitely be sure to give him a follow on LinkedIn. Now, before we jump into there, of course, big shout out to our sponsor, Clary, renewed for their, I think this is their fourth quarter. Wonderful software company who is in alignment with my mission and vision, which is how do we make our sales and marketing efforts better. So if you're a company that uses Salesforce, you got to check out Clary, because if you invest in Salesforce, I'm telling you right now, that investment is at risk, because Salesforce is a database. It doesn't manage itself, right? So what Clary is a intelligent software platform that plugs into your Salesforce and does some really amazing things. Here's the two main things that I love the most. Number one, your reps are out in the field. They're super busy. Using Salesforce is not going to help them close more deals, but you need them to be compliant to get good data in there, because as they say, garbage in, garbage out. So you need good data to get in to be able to make good decisions, right? A lot of times that data that's getting in is not good. It's bad data, right? So what Clary does is it automates the data that your reps need to get into the system. It's really quite magical, to be honest with you. The next thing it does is that it layers on and makes the idea of running revenue not something that's owned just by the sales and commercial team, but a cross-organizational function, right? They call it revenue collaboration and governance. So that way your sales team, your marketing team, clinical success, so on and so forth, everybody's on the same page about running revenue. And that could be things like identifying deals that are at risk, looking at which deals are going to be closing soon and where the budget should be allocated, pipeline velocity, and so much more. So don't take my word for it yourself. Go and see it. Book a demo. So go to clari.com. That's CLARI.com and learn more. Or check the show notes below and click the link for Clari. That'll take you directly to their life science page. They've got some really impressive companies that they're working with, and I know they can help yours as well. And finally, if you're a startup CEO or founder, hey, I know what it's like to have to raise money. I know what it's like to get commercial traction. It's really, really hard. We at Khateeb & Co. want to help you. We work with a numerous amount of startups to help them raise awareness with investors through social media and content. And a lot of times, most companies aren't commercial ready. And so before they even hire a VP of sales, a commercial team, they come in and contract us out to lay a commercial foundation to help them use digital sales processes and marketing to find early adopters who can become KOLs for the company early in its days. If you want to learn more, go to khateebandco.com. Now, let's get on to our episode with Tom O'Neill. Enjoy. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. And my guest today joins us probably in a really interesting way. One, as the number one show in MedTech, I get pitched all the time by people as to why somebody should come on the show or why they should come on the show. It's really rare that somebody's son does that. So Tom O'Neill is the CEO of Cognivue, and his son actually reached out to me via Instagram and pitched on why his dad should come on the show. And for me, being a father, I was just really touched by the fact that somebody's son really like admired their father that much that they did that pitch. And it was a good pitch, to be frank. And so because of that, and also, Tom and I, we had a separate Zoom call, and we had so much fun on that call. I was just like, absolutely, he's got to come on my show. So Tom, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me, Omar. Thank you.
No, totally. So Tom, you served a lot of, high roles in leadership in MedTech at large companies. But I think like one of the things that I want to start off with, which I think a lot of sales leaders will benefit, is that you had some really interesting stints in your career at different companies. You were at Nabisco, which for those who are familiar, that's the company that was in the book Barbarians at the Gate, which was all about like hostile takeovers and mergers and acquisitions, among many other things. But let's start with the first thing, which is like, where'd you grow up, and what were some influences in your life, and how did you get into MedTech? Because I think I will probably get to that as we go through like your Nabisco years and everything. But maybe start off with how did you grow up, and what were some key influences in your life?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, the west side of Cleveland. It was an interesting. First, my parents were amazing, right? But I grew up in a world where my dad worked from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. and my mom worked from 5 p.m. till 1 a.m. My entire life, right? So I saw that. That was a huge influence for me. I fast forward after high school, I went to college. I went to Cleveland State. I got to tell you, school just wasn't for me. It wasn't my thing at the time, right? So I went for 2 semesters, felt like senior high school. I was living at home and driving to school. I ended up dropping out after 2 semesters. Then I went to be a furniture mover. So I was a furniture mover for the next year, which basically meant I was a truck driver. And I came home from one of the very long days, and there were long days every day. And in 16 hours. My dad was up at 1 a.m. when I got there, and I had to go back to work at 6 a.m. But my dad said, hey, listen, rather than hump triple dressers up 3 flights of stairs for the next 20 years, why don't you go study for 12 hours a day at the library at school and make a better life for yourself? So, I did. I made that move. 3 of my best friends, from high school, we went to University of Akron. And here was a big driver for me. I learned a lot about myself. Is everybody that I talked to, adults and friends too, they're like, oh, you guys are going to party and you guys are going to fail out. And something changed in me, Omar, like clicked, right? Like you tell me what I can't do, and now I'm going to show you, right? So I went to school at Akron, lived there, but I was taking 16 to 18 hours a day credits, and I was working 32 hours a week, never got below a 3.5 GPA. and then ultimately, went into my senior year where I did an internship with Nabisco. And that's where my career kind of took off, because after I graduated, I started there full time. And then it's, 30 years later, 28 of those years have been in healthcare.
Got it. Got it. Well, let's start maybe with the Nabisco years, which is like, how did you end up there? What were some things that you learned? Because I think
Yeah.
you were there during the time of that like hostile takeover, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was with in the biscuit division, which is the cookies and crackers. And, another thing, just to kind of go back to that initial comment about people telling you what you can't do. I remember family saying, or friends saying, "Hey, do you need a degree to sell cookies and crackers?" And it was one of those things that just kind of grinded me, right? Irritated me. And so to get to the Nabisco thing, it was that moment that it was being sold to KKR. And it was all the focus was performance, performance, performance. I took over the worst territory and turned it around, made it my mission to work whatever, 12, 14 hours a day. What was interesting, Omar, is I even tried to go back for my master's at the time, but there was no master's online. It was only, driving to school, but I was already working 12, 14 hours a day. So I quickly realized I was either going to kill myself in a car accident because I was racing so fast, because I wanted to do the best I could do at work while also doing more and trying to inform and educate myself. So I pulled out to get my master's, and then I just became work, and life became my master's, if you will.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's like a journey that a lot of like sales leaders go on, which is essentially, there is no school for sales per se. Well, I have a course, but like, pun intended, but like essentially, you can't go to college for sales and everything. And so a lot of it's just being self-taught and then like apprenticing under the right people. Where'd you go after Nabisco, and like, what was your medical sales career like?
Yeah. So I went into from Nabisco Biscuit. I went into J&J. So I was at Johnson & Johnson for 11 years, but I started out in consumer. So think about, there's a transition there, right? From Nabisco consumer packaged goods to J&J. So Tylenol, Pepcid, Mylanta, right? All those products. So went from consumer to consumer healthcare, right? OTC medications that are sold in drugstores or stores, globally. Did that for 4 years, and then I'm like, hey, if I'm going to be at J&J, and I wanted to be at J&J for a long time, I'm going to find my way to pharmaceuticals, right? So I pushed to get into the pharma world at J&J with Arthur McNeil. But the interesting thing was, even within the world of J&J, and at the time it was a $14 billion company. Now it's, well over 70 billion. I think even after the
This is a question worth Googling. So, because that's amazing to hear that. Like when you were with them, it was a $14 billion company. Yeah. So now it's a $372 billion market cap.
Market cap, right? So it was 14 billion at the time. But I knew if I wanted to grow within J&J, pharma was that kind of rocket ship. So I had to break in. But when I went and I have a lot of great friends that still to this day that I go scuba diving with and other stuff from the pharma space that I grew up with at J&J. But when I went there, you would have thought, because I came from consumer, I was selling used Chevys and they were selling new Mercedes. So it was, again, this chip on my shoulder, right? Like, tell me what I can't do and I'm going to show you. So within 2 years, won President's Club. 5 of my district managers went on President's Club with me, which was awesome. Got to manage an army of people, did that for a while, went to the reimbursement side. So started working on payer access. So I moved through that at J&J, and then I was at J&J at that point, 10, 11 years. And I realized that, listen, the best thing that ever happened to me was go work for J&J. The second best thing I ever did was leave J&J. So I left J&J, went to Valiant, ran their derm and neuro franchises for the sales. So I ran their sales organizations for derm and neuro. Grew up there for a year, but here I am. I was literally like 30 years old, 32 years old, and I leave the mothership. I go to Valiant to run that business, and I was out within a year, because they had a big drug called Veramidine. It was phase 3 trials for Hep C. it didn't do well. It met its safety endpoint, but not its efficacy endpoint. So now I'm out, right? Like my career, like high flying, doing all this thing, and now I'm out. So my job was to find a job. I landed Synergize, which was a VC backed hybrid contact lens company, and it was based down in Carlsbad, California.
Was it
I was number 7, so I was the first
you went
sales
from like
guy.
big companies to your first startup?
First startup and VC backed startup, right? So
Got it.
it's a
Yeah.
whole different world in that space, right? So I'd never, and here again, kind of a common theme, right? I remember interviewing with the CEO, his name is Tom Cruise, and Dave, the CFO. And I remember him saying, "You don't have any optometry or vision care experience." And I didn't do it disrespectfully. I said, "Well, either do you, Tom." His name is Tom Cruise. I said, "Either do you." And him and the CFO laughed a little bit. I said, "It's not about that. That's content. I can learn content. Let me tell you about how I would build a sales organization." And so I had to build it from scratch, right? From the territory, the profiles of the reps we wanted, the territory alignments, the comp models, everything that you could imagine, we built from scratch. Did that for a couple of years, and then went to Bausch and Lomb. Moved from Southern California to Bausch and Lomb, and that's where I was again running all of U.S. sales for contact lenses, vision care. Then I took over all North America, which was not only the vision care and the contact lenses, but also all the consumer, and did that for till they sold. So when I went to Bausch and Lomb, it had just been taken private. So before it was taken private by Warburg, which is a big PE firm, they were the second oldest company on the New York Stock Exchange, and it was a complete turnaround, right? So Pete Valente recruited me in to help with the team to turn that around. So we spent the next 5 years turning around, and Valiant ended up acquiring it through that phase, and then I moved over to orthoclinical diagnostics. So here again, go to a totally different space. So chemistry, immunohematology, donor screening, and so I went there and ran North America, Latin America, and EMEA for them. Did that so that was part of J&J again. But I also knew that when I went there, they were being sold. So they were being sold, and Carlyle, another large private equity firm, ended up acquiring them from Johnson & Johnson. I stayed on with Carlyle for another year before I got recruited to go run global surgical for Hologic. So I ran the global surgical business for Hologic's women's health franchise. So we did everything from uterine and fibroid removal, polyp and fibroid removal, and uterine ablations, and we had a fluid management system too.
Tom, if you don't mind, I want to jump in for a second and ask you.
Sure.
So, like, you served at like a lot of various types of companies and sizes, and like were given like really huge responsibilities at a young age. And you mentioned winning President's Club. I mean, what's your advice? Like, what do you think? What does it take to be a successful salesperson? I mean, forget about med device, but just for those who are just starting out, I think that's the one thing that people really aren't given much guidance on, which is everybody knows, like, to be successful in sales, like, you just got to be really good at closing deals. But we don't talk about the mindset and the mentality that goes behind it. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, you've hired a lot of salespeople. Like, how do you identify a great salesperson without, and let's say they don't have numbers behind their names yet?
Yeah. So I'll clarify. I won 11 President's Club, so I'm proud of that, right? Whether as an individual contributor or as a manager or above, right? And I will tell you, it's a couple things from me. It's work ethic first off, and it's understanding where you are from a performance standpoint against your quota. Right. So where am I at any given time, whether it's a month, you got to make the week, to make the month, to make the quarter, to make the year. And it's something that I learned early on as a rep. And it's just because, listen, I had to make money. I had to pay the bills. Right. So to me, it was all about understanding, like, how are they paying me? What am I being measured against? And then how do I influence that? Right. And how do I drive that? So that was a key driver for me, is understanding my comp model to the point where I was measuring it, managing it every day, and then driving it. The other piece is customer service and just supporting your customer. I don't care if your customer is a retail buyer, a procurement person, a doctor, a scientist in the lab. They're all people, and they all want to be supported the right way. So I did everything I could to better understand how that individual was measured in their job, and then how could I help deliver for them, right? So those were key drivers for me. And then like nobody was ever going to outwork me, like nobody, right? Like I did, was just my mission, right? I was going to beat everybody to the office or to the hospital, and I wasn't going to leave till it was done and everybody else was gone.
Got it. When you talk about measuring against like your comp plan, can you give me a little more details about that? Like what does that mean, first of all?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, because I think it's cleaner if I explain it to you as a manager. So one of the first things I do when I was a manager, or even as a CEO, if I go ride with a rep, I ask them, how are you doing against plan? And if they don't know, which by the way is amazing to me, right? But they'll answer. They'll be like, I'm not really sure. I'm like, how are you a sales person, right? Sales is the only job where you're paid based on your performance, right? Everything else is salary. You actually get paid. The better you do, the more you get paid, right? So if you're a true salesperson and you don't know where you stand on any given day, one of two things has happened. Either A, you're not a good sales rep and you don't understand how you're getting paid, or B, your comp plan is so complicated that it's not easily understood or easily tracked. So that it wasn't always the rep's fault. Sometimes I had to take it back and go back to my comp team and go, hey, we got to make this clean. We got to make this simple so they understand, the reps understand how they're making their money. Because if you can't see a direct line from that, Omar, from where you are now to how you're going to earn bonus this month or this quarter, like, what are you doing other than just being a customer service person? You know, I give you another example. When I was at Hologic and I was with my surgical reps and we're in the OR and I'd watch them work. And if they were just going to be, I'm going to say this respectfully, if they were just going to be another scrub tech or a scrub nurse, right? Just there to set up and make sure everything was there. If all they did was be there for that or be there to support the doctor, that's going to be limiting.
They already have scrub techs and nurses to help with that. They don't need another one.
Right, exactly. So my conversation would always be, all right, to my rep is, what are you doing to sell them either a new piece of capital, a line extension on the technology we have, a new product we're launching, a new kit. What are you doing to expand the platform within that hospital so we could grow beyond just how many cases can we attend? If you're living in a world where you're just how many cases can you attend, you're going to make short-term money, short-term performance, but over time that's going to fail because there's only so many procedures to be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think like understanding your comp plan is also important just to figure out like what's the fastest path to hitting that quota, right?
Yeah. When I changed our comp plan in the last 6 months here, and I changed it to incentivize reps for a longer term contract. So 24 months, 36 months paid out more than a 12-month contract, right? Even more than a capital contract. And I can't even tell you how many people said, you're never going to be able to do that. People aren't going to be able to sell it. But the incentive was so high for them to sell a 36-month contract. We've sold more capital, more 36-month contracts in the last 4 months than we have for the last 4 years. And we did it because salespeople are performance-driven, compensation-driven people, and they want to perform and they want to succeed. So you put it in front of them. That's what drives performance. There's all the other stuff too, right? There's a lot of activity and other things, but all the activity is a means to an end. Right? How do you perform? How do you drive to beat quota and make as much money as you can?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there. I mean, even the late Charlie Munger, one of his in his speech on psychology of human misjudgment, he talked about incentives and how powerful they are. And I think the example he used was that at I think Xerox, they, the GM couldn't figure out why their newest printer was just not being sold and wasn't working. And when we looked at it, it was because like the older printer had a better incentive
Right.
in terms of selling, and so that's what the sales team sold. And so I think like once you put, incentives, I think are undervalued in terms of how powerful they can be. And I think that's also for like med device companies who have to go through distributors, right? This is why I think capital in the United States, at least, I don't recommend people using distributors for selling capital equipment, because the incentive isn't that strong. Because like it's like, okay, well, I could spend like 6 to 9 months wasting time or spending a lot of time trying to sell this one piece of capital equipment, or I can just sell this other disposable implant, which is like low cost, but I sell high volume of it and I make the same amount of money.
Omar, 100%. I was on a call this morning with a group that looks and essentially interviews potential distributors for you. And the same conversation was had, right? Like capital is not a great model for a distributor or a distributor rep, because they're looking for consumption and the disposable.
Yeah, and even on that stuff, I mean, I have friends who are distributors, they're getting paid net 90, net 120 sometimes from hospitals on those things. So like for them to take on something like capital is just like a huge risk to their business. And I don't blame them for not being great at selling capital. It's just the incentive is not good enough,
No, but I think there's other ways to use distributors, right? I think you can use distributors as a lead gen model, right? So pay them for leads, and then pay them more for a lead that closes.
I totally agree with that. How do you determine, like with a distributor? I mean, it's a simple answer for me, but most people don't know how to calculate this. But how do you agree on the cost per lead?
Yeah, I think it's two. So I think there's a lead that's just a lead, and that's not super valuable for me. A lead that closes, that's super valuable for me. So now it's important for me as the supplier to make sure that I'm profiling what a customer looks like, right? What a successful customer looks like. Because if that distributor rep doesn't know what they're looking for and they're just putting names in, there's like I could put inside sales in, or I could buy a list, right? That's not interesting to me. A warm lead or a hot lead where they've already done some of the qualifying, that's where it matters. And then when I close it, like let my reps close it, but when they close it, make it a bigger incentive for them. So I think it depends on the price of the product, whether it's a SaaS model, whether it's a subscription, whether it's a per device or capital. I still think they all can have a model that's a lead gen. That's where I think some distributors can really bring value to an organization.
Got it. Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think that the more, in at least in our industry, and this is part of the reason why I started my company, the more sophisticated we get at selling and doing business, the better quality results we'll end up getting, I think. At some point in your career, like, you made this jump from, being a director and manager and everything to essentially like at Bausch & Lomb, you were VP and GM. At Ortho Clinic, you were president of North America. When you make that jump, like you're getting paid more money to handle like bigger problems, right? What's that transition like? Because I think that's one thing that I think reps don't get. Like me personally, I don't think there's a lot of people who are great sales reps or great sales people, but they're not going to be good in like a GM role, right? But they kind of get promoted to their level of incompetence, right? Their skill set is just not matched for success. What's that transition like? And like for me, when I talk to marketers, my thing is like, okay, if you love running, let's say, campaigns and doing copywriting and everything, like don't go above a marketing manager role or director. Because the moment you get to like a head of marketing, you're not dealing with that. You're dealing with like bigger strategic problems, like where do we deploy money? And if you don't like that conversation, or you're not interested in that, like you're not gonna be successful. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that, but I'm going to start with a little bit of a different conversation, because I think
totally
the biggest moves in my career were when I went inside to marketing, from sales to marketing. Okay, so think about it this way: when I was in sales, I was managing 2 of the top 10 customers in the country for J&J Consumer. I went into marketing really not having an idea of what I was getting into. And then I realized when I get into marketing, I have better understanding of the whole model, the business model. So I got to work with finance, with operations, with customer service, with sales, with marketing, with all of it, right? So I got a better picture of the total model that I did not have as just a salesperson. And I think that's okay because you need salespeople very focused on driving sales. You don't need them worrying about all this other stuff, right? But getting into marketing, that was my first opportunity to really get a better understanding of the strategy and why we did things. The other thing is I realized when I did call as a sales rep, I probably did shut everything down to get me what I needed. And that's a bad thing because I might have taken the marketing people off of something, a more profitable, high growth project to get me what I needed. Now all of a sudden I just had a better understanding. The second big move I made was going from being an individual contributor to being a sales manager. Man, I'm telling you, Omar, this was kind of, just think about it. I was a super successful sales rep everywhere I had been, right? And everything was about what I did, like how I did it. And then I went to be a sales manager, frontline manager, and now nothing had to do with me. Everything had to do with how I got it done through others. So now all of a sudden, how do I optimize my team? Because everybody is driven by different things. So how do you really, get the best out of everyone so that they're delivering? So ultimately you can be successful. And by the way, as a manager, you know what you never do? Never talk about me. I never use the word I. Never. My boss's job is to talk about me. My job is to talk about the great work my reps are doing, right? So that's how so now to your question, that's kind of been the way I've operated at every level, right? Like I've never made it about me. The higher I go, the more I make it about the team that I have. The more important the culture of performance, the culture of people becomes important. Again, I mentioned content, like you can learn all the content, right? You mentioned this about you get to the level of failure, right? You reference something like that. What I would say is a great rep doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great manager. It just doesn't. And it doesn't because that doesn't always translate. So J&J did a great job of identifying great reps, but also those leadership capabilities, those core competencies of leadership. So you could identify the people that were still absolutely high performers at driving the business, but also did they have the leadership qualities to understand it's more about the team than it is about them. You're going to be successful as a leader if you get the most out of your team. So translate that to my first move into general management, right? And then to president and beyond. To me, and I think if you talk to most everybody that's ever worked for me, I do everything I can to make it about the team and creating an environment of performance. That's what I focus on.
And I'm happy you mentioned that because, I had Jim Alexion, who's the SVP of sales for Intuitive in the early days, and he was mentioning that when he got to the executive level, he before he got promoted, he won an award, and his boss said, "Hey, enjoy this award because this is the last time you're going to receive one of these. Like, they don't give awards to people like us." Right. And usually I guess the award is the zeros that go at the end of your paycheck, right? But I think one of the problems, do you feel like one of the problems in our industry is that you have a really good salesperson who's a great individual contributor, and then they get promoted to a VP level, and now rather than being a really good manager of people, they're just kind of like this all-star salesperson who manages a sales team, and at the end of the quarter they're flying all over the place closing deals and stuff, which probably makes you feel really good, but that's just not a scalable business model. Do you feel like that's a problem in our industry?
I think it's a problem in most med device, med tech, whether it's and I guess within any space, right? Because whether it's pharma, whether it's surgical, orthopedics, diagnostics, you have that. You have great reps that have become great managers, and you'll see Omar, I've seen that, right? I've seen where they're on a plane, they're going to close deals, they're going to do that stuff because they didn't pick up the buckets of knowledge and understand the importance of leadership that becomes scalable. So I think of when you're a rep, and when you look at my resume and my career, it looks like it's a jagged process, right? Like I think everybody looks at their career path and thinks it should be a straight line. Okay. I 100% do not think that's true. I think you should make lateral moves. You should make backwards moves. You should then make frontwards moves. Like every one of those moves you make should not be to do the same thing you've been doing for a different company. That should be a bucket of knowledge that you're picking up. So what's the new bucket of knowledge you're going to get in that new role at that new company? Listen, if you want to be the hired gun and you just want to do that, that's awesome. Like, go do it. I'm talking about management, general manager, and president above. If you want to do more, go get those buckets of knowledge. Go take the step from rep to marketing. Go make the step from marketing to payer access. Go make the step from payer access to second line management. Go learn different buckets of knowledge. Because when, to your earlier point, if you're going to have to get into strategic conversations about where the business is going, or should we make this acquisition, or should we divest this business, or should we restructure the organization, if you don't have those buckets of knowledge and you just did this straight line up to vice president or up to president, and you never got to experience those things, how good are you going to be at doing it? Like I've learned, and I think this all goes back to, fail fast, learn fast, make mistakes, learn, keep moving, have great mentors, right? I learn as much, maybe more from the bad managers I've had that as I learned from my good managers and my good mentors, right? Like I try to constantly soak up as much as I can, good and bad, right? So that I know if it's a bad manager, they're doing something that I don't think makes sense. And I'm like, that's not what I want to be when I'm a manager, right? I want to be different than that, right? So I think all of those go into, you don't just step into the GM role, right? I mean, everybody's got to take a big step at some point, but I'll go back to those first two steps I told you, going inside into marketing, understanding how they run their business, and secondly, into a manager role where you're not the individual contributor and you got to learn how to make it about everybody else and not yourself.
You mentioned going backwards in your career. Like what's a good example of when you would go backwards and you would support something like that? Because usually the problem with that is that when you do that, you go backwards in your responsibilities, but also your pay. And so that's like really tough for people,
It is. So first off, if you're in a bigger organization, a lot of times they'll protect that. So they'll put in some type of, gap filler, right? So if you're going to take a step back and you're going to go into marketing, but you're going to go in for that bucket of knowledge, they'll cover that. If they don't, again, this goes back to who's the right person that you want to be a manager, a director, a VP, a general manager, a president, or a CEO. It's somebody that plays the long game. If you're like, listen, I got to make 300 this year. If I don't make 300, then I'm not taking that job. That, by the way, that's totally cool if that's where you see yourself. If you want to get to serious money, significant money, you might have to take that step back where you go, I'm going to make the lateral, I'm going to take a step back and go into an assistant product director or a marketing role, and know that that's 2 years investment in you, in your career. So you might leave to go for an MBA, right? People get that. But think of going into another role that might be a lateral or a slight step back for that bucket of knowledge. So if you're going to do it and you're going to pay for an MBA, why wouldn't you do it with your career and go take 18 to 24 months to learn another segment of the business? And I'm going to use marketing in a different way, because marketing to me is like product directors, product managers are mini GMs, okay? Because you get to manage the budget and all the different levers that you can pull to drive your business. So think about that as a really good junior GM role that gets you ready for more later.
No, and I think it's a great way to put it. A lot of times I tell people, sometimes you have to think about the investment of like revenue generating skills or income generating skills that you're getting.
Yep.
So like when I went from sales to marketing, like I saw a little bit of a decrease in my salary.
Yep.
But I knew that like over the long term, like the skills I was developing were a lot more sought after and unique. My mentor Chris Sells said it best to me. He's like, "Look, Omar, he's like, there's thousands of salespeople out there. He's like, go into marketing and learn how the company is really run. And then if after that you want to come back to sales, you can." I was like, "It's a great way to look at it."
It's 100% agree with that. And I think, listen, the fact that you're starting off and the most important people in any organization are the ones in front of the customer. Like the fact that you've already built that skill set and that competency, you're gonna carry that forever, right? Like marketers who just started marketing and didn't interact with the field or the customer, there's a gap there.
Yeah, and I think they're at a significant disadvantage. That's not to say like there's plenty of really good marketers I know who never sold,
sure.
But like there's a huge gap that you have to make up for, and it's really tough. And that's why, at least in our industry, I don't think marketing is very strong because most marketing in our industry is more product management focused and upstream, which is important as its place. But like this is also why most sales doesn't like marketing because it's not helping to grow pipeline or close deals.
Omar, I agree with you, but I'd say the very good marketers, the self-aware marketers that are either spending time in the field. Every organization I've had, I make my marketers go ride with reps.
That's the right thing to do. Yeah.
It's not even a question. They have to go ride with reps because they need to understand what it's like, what it's like to be the face of the company, the face of the product. They have to have those discussions that might be more challenging. They need to understand that so that the tools they're putting together are the right tools for the sales organization because nobody has a job if we're not selling something.
No, absolutely. And then I want to kind of round out. I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing at your new company, Cognivue, what Cognivue does. But then also, like, this is the thing where I wonder how it's affected you because, when you depart the role of like a VP of marketing, VP of sales, and you're at CEO level, like you don't get to do the things that you love. You're actually getting paid to deal with just a lot of bad news and problems most of the time. So I'm just wondering, like, how's that been for you? Because you've been CEO there for 5 years now, but this is your first CEO role, correct?
It is. So it's my first CEO role, and I started with it was me and 3 people, right? So I came in and it was a distressed asset. So it was an IP acquisition by my only investor, and so we had to, they
acquired it and then came in and brought you on board, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so Tom acquired the business, and then he recruited me in to come in and commercialize it. So it was already carried through the FDA clearance process, and then he brought me in to commercialize it.
Before we get into like talking about real quick, what is Cognivue and what do they do?
Yeah, so we're the first FDA computerized test of cognition. So think of it like a large laptop, and we have just filed our 19th patent. But we are as much the medical device company as we are a software company. So I have an entire software team. I brought all manufacturing inside, but this technology. For 40 years, it's been paper and pencil. Some of your listeners might know of things like MoCA or MMSE or MiniCog. These are ways that neuropsych tests that have been done in the neurology, neuropsych space. We have, to lack of a better way of explaining it, gamified that, right? And it's not question and answers. It's 10 exercises in 10 minutes. We are measuring every 1/12 of the second. So we get 130,000 data points in 10 minutes. And then our system simplifies it. And so it's self-administered, it's self-scored, a report comes out. The doctor, whether it's a neurologist, a neuropsych, a psych, or even primary care, internal medicine, family practice, they can use that to determine what the next steps should be for that patient. It's not a diagnostic. It's a tool for them to use to determine, is it still early enough that there can be some intervention before it becomes something like Alzheimer's or dementia?
Got it. So when you were brought in to take it over, first of all, like, why did you decide to do this? Because it's kind of like, it's a tough ask, right? To come in and be CEO, but then you're CEO of like a small 3-person company, and then it's a distressed asset. Like, what exactly about it attracted you?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think for me, getting to work with my primary investor, Tom Golisano. He's worth $7 billion. He built a company called Paychex. It's a payroll services company. He's got 17 companies out of the family office. So I got the last almost 6 years now. I got to work with Tom. He's my chairman of my board, but got to work with him. I like his style. He lets me run the business, but he also is there for me to learn, and I get to bounce stuff off him. Now remember where I've been, right? So turned around Bausch and Lomb, turned around Ortho Clinical, but also drove it through an acquisition, turned around Hologic. Like if you look at what my experience has been, it's really kind of taken assets that have challenges and then turn those around, right? So what was interesting to me is how do we make this a successful space? And I also knew that there are over 300 drugs in development for Alzheimer's and dementia, and the system's not set up right now to identify the patients that are going to be good candidates for those interventions. So I knew this testing space was going to be explosive, right? So for me, understanding what that was, and then, to be honest, Tom gave me a really good piece of the equity, so significantly bigger than a traditional CEO would get. So for me, it was one where, it is all about building something and building something that I wanted to build. So think about this too, Omar. Everywhere I've been in a big corporate environment. Here I got to build it from scratch and build a culture. Like I think if you build a performance culture where you take care of your people, they will take care of your customers. Like I just firmly believe that. And then you drive performance and you hold people accountable to it. Well, we've been able to do that, right? And so that's what drove me here was that, listen, everybody's working for a reason, right? I love being able to build something, fix something and build it. I love the expected or hope payoff when we have an event. But I also love the fact that I get to make those strategic decisions in the direction that we go and where we go and how we go about it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I also agree with the idea that for one, it's kind of stupid, the fact that we have to have a conversation about this, but in our industry, it's kind of like they want to find a better way to retain people. I'm like, well, just pay them more money. It's kind of pretty easy way. Do people like, I don't know, benefits and pizza parties and whatever, sure, that stuff is cool, but what works really well? Money.
Yeah,
just pay people really good money. And I think if you pay people really good money, they'll also make sure that they're, your customers really well taken care of. I think, I'm trying to remember who was it. Oh God, the fact that I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, it'll come to me in a second. But I was speaking to somebody who said that they actually don't believe in taking care of the customer first. They believe in taking care of the employees first.
Yeah, because they'll take care of the customer.
If we make sure our employees are really well taken care of, the customer is going to be taken really well care of.
Yep. So I couldn't agree more. I think that's how we try to operate here. I also think for me, make more money, but if you're in a startup, so you can't necessarily pay what the big companies pay when people come into a startup. So I fought hard with Tom and with the board to give equity to every single person that works here. That's down to the frontline, manufacturing folks or customer service folks, or even, the first few people, and more equity up front. Like the higher the risk, the more there should be equity. We've de-risked over the last 6 years, so there's less equity for the people that come in now. But because you can't necessarily pay them as much in a base, for my sales reps, we incentivize the heck out of them, right? So they can earn some real good money, right? So yes, the money's there, but that equity piece is also driving them, right? Because they've heard all the stories. We've all heard the stories of be there when an event happens. That equity is what's going to make a difference. Life-changing money versus, just annual base and bonus.
No, 100%. How do you think about selling and marketing these days, considering how much the landscape has changed? So for you guys, do you sell directly to physician practices? Who do you sell to directly?
Yeah, we do. So we sell to direct to. So we think about it this way. We sell to systems, hospital systems, but you don't just get into a hospital system. You have to build, support at the neurology level. So if we're in this case, Like at Hologic, it was a OBGYN or GYN. Here, it's the neurologist going to be the gatekeeper, right? So get the neurologist to buy into our technology and the value of our technology, and then you work it into the system, and then you work it into primary care. A neurology or neuropsych department is not going to let anything into primary care for cognitive testing that they haven't already approved. So yeah, we sell to MDs. We also have a screener, a 5-minute screener that we sell to the allied health. So we have audiologists and we have a lot of audiologists across US, Canada, and the UK that use our screening tool. And this is the easiest way to explain it, Omar, is we hear with our ears, but we process those sounds with our brain. So there's a cognitive component to how our ears work and also our vision. So there's a whole other business there that we shifted back during COVID when every MD office in the hospital, everybody kind of closed down to reps. We shifted to audiology. So that's that agility that you have as a small company that you don't always have as a big company. We shifted to audiology, and that's where we started selling during COVID.
You know, when you look at the industry now, like, where do you feel like our industry is struggling the most on the commercial side in terms of like innovations within sales and marketing and stuff? What are the kind of things that you feel like we need to do a much better job as an industry? I know it's kind of a broad question, but like even in so many different roles and everything, and you kind of see from a much higher place. What kind of comes to mind for that?
Yeah, I think it's how do we identify great talent? Talent that's wants to put the effort in, and because I think things have changed within the amount of work somebody wants to put in to get paid, and that work-life balance. So I think the younger generation now, many of them look for that work-life balance, and then I think COVID and the work from home added to that. Okay, so now all of a sudden, how do you find great talent that's willing to put 12, 14 hours a day and drive their business and do that, right? Like I've heard from some of these folks, and it's not a bad thing. It's just a different mindset, but they'll be like, I do this I used to do X number of events last year. I'm doing double that now, but I'm not paid anymore, and they're a salaried employee. So you just look at it and go, but you and I, whatever it took to be successful, you were going to do it, right? And you were rewarded for it in sales. How many people are willing to put that effort in and drive that, and then know that they got to do that for 2 to 3 years, 4 years? When I have this conversation with young professionals, I mentor a lot of young professionals, and I give them the example. I'm like, okay, you're making $100,000 as a sales rep. Somebody else comes along and offers you 120. Are you going to take it? And every one of them first goes, yes. And I go, stop, right? Like, first of all, they're promising you're going to be in management development. They're promising you all this stuff. You're going to be basically doing the same thing in the new company that you were doing now, just for 20 grand. And then I do the math, and I make them divide it by the 20, 25, 26 pays. I take out the taxes. I go, okay, so your brand, what you're worth, the brand of Omar is worth whatever, call it $400 a pay. That's what you're telling me you're worth. And they're like, well, I never thought about it that way. I said, go get another bucket of knowledge. If you're going to leave, go do that. And then they're like, yeah, but I've been doing this at that point for 2 years. I go, show me as a rep, you can grow on top of growth. Show me you can get through a really difficult year, right? Those are things, that staying power is what I think is one of our bigger challenges. To answer your question, I think we gotta find the right people, and then we gotta set them up for success through training and education, so that everybody wants to be the president now in 2 years. Like, you don't get there without understanding all those different things, all those different components. So I think there's just an education component to it.
No, I completely agree, and I think this is part of the reason. Like my company was started on an educational product, a course, and the thing that was kind of shocking to me is like 98% to date. And that course has been around for 2 years. 98% of the people who are enrolled in it, they're reps, and they all paid out of pocket. And so one of the things I'm kind of disappointed in is that like the industry, they kind of talk out of both sides of their mouth. So the industry talks about like investing into your people, and we're trying to be very innovative and everything. And I'm like, okay, well, why haven't you trained your reps?
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like training, like the sales training is so poor in this industry. Like, I think like just because you're a rep, they assume that you know how to negotiate and persuade and everything. And forget that. I mean, just understanding the fact that the customer's changed and how they communicate. So like, forget social media. Let's just look at the basic, which is email. You know, how many salespeople have been properly trained on how do you send a persuasive email? Like, what's your follow-up sequence and everything? And the answer is very little.
Very little.
You know, so there's this like changing of the guard that's happening right now, where I think I'm at the very beginning of the adoption curve, where there are sales leaders and companies who believe in this and are like, you know, we got to get our people trained better and they got to know what they're doing. But everybody else, it's just kind of like, you know, I feel like reps are, what they're dealing with is like a company who's not willing to invest in them, and then constantly reducing their territory while also increasing their quota every year. And then their guidance is just like, well, you just got to work harder and you got to just find your way in and everything. And I'm like, you know, and it's, anytime a rep tells me that, I'm just like, you should find a new job, find somebody else, do it, because you're not being put in a position to be successful. And if you're not being put in a position to be successful, you got a job that's just making you like a disgruntled person.
Yeah. So, you know? Omar, I agree. I think that goes back to the point of you got to, and I grew up in a world at J&J where there was a lot of training. There was a lot of focus on development. But in addition to that, I also never let anybody tell me how my career was going to go. So I went and grabbed these buckets of knowledge and tried to learn different things. But your managers, right? Your team leads, your managers, your directors, you got to train them so that they can, because what the adult learning happens in bits, right? It doesn't, the sales meetings where you go for 5 days and they just put all this stuff in your head. It's worthless. Like you're maybe retaining 20-30% of that. And so for me, adult learning is what I love what you're doing, Omar, because I think it's how do you do it in small bits and bites so that they can not only listen, but learn and then go try it out and keep practicing. I think that's the way adult learning. I think we're much smarter about it, but the managers have to know how to do that because they're working with the reps all the time, right? They're the ones riding with the reps. They're the ones that understand how to get done. That's where a significant amount of training has to happen, is between the manager and the rep. And if the manager doesn't know, you're just propagating the issue, right? It's becoming a bigger problem.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, I mean, on that same token, I always tell people like your career and personal growth is not necessarily your manager's responsibility. Yeah. And so I tell people all the time, like, you know, when was the last, you know, a lot of reps reach out to me for advice and I ask them like, okay, well, when was the last time like you bought a book and just read a book? It's like, it's been a long time. I'm like, all right, what about a course? What about a conference? What about something? And, you know, they realize that like they haven't done any professional development in years. Like some of them are like 8, 9, 10 years. And I'm like, how do you expect to make more money given how fast things change and move? And you haven't even spent time to learn new modalities, new tools, like what, like, you know.
Omar, I'm part of a CEO forum. So I'm with other CEOs just so I can listen and learn, and we challenge and we talk to each other and we have people come in to present to us. Like the learning never stops, right? Like I got this one. I just got this.
Oh yeah.
I just picked it up. Like, so.
And yeah, see, you're CEO and and the thing, a lot of these reps are like, oh, I'm too busy. I'm like, do you think CEOs are more busier than you? CEOs still buy books and learn. Yeah. You know, they get on, again, going to forums and everything. It's just all part of the process. Yeah. You know, for me, like I don't have an exact number, but at minimum, like 5 to 10% of my income every year is spent on education. Like I can tell you just right off the bat this year, there is an entrepreneurial mastermind group that I'm a part of, and I pay monthly for that, but I pay about $18,000 a year for that thing. Yeah, that's one thing, you know. It's
investment in yourself.
Yeah. I feel like that, like you'll never go wrong with an investment in yourself. You know, like there's a entrepreneur named Alex Hormozi. He's kind of really famous now, but he has this saying where it's like,
I've seen his stuff.
Yeah. He's like, you can invest in the S&P 500 and you get like a 10% return, or you invest in the S&Me 500. And if you invest in your own education, like you'll get like 10, 20, 30 extra turns.
100%, you know, up a little bit and go,
100%. Tom, just in kind of wrapping up, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Out of curiosity, I mean, I see that you're a reader. What are some of the books that you recommend for like sales leaders to read that have had a impact on your career?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of them that are out there, and most of them are theoretical and theoretical in that they're not really into the nuts and bolts of it. And so I'm going to tell you the one I want your folks to read is Built Not Born, and it's by my primary investor. So you think of it, we're talking about sales, but every position I've had, from as a sales rep all the way up to CEO, I'm selling. I'm either selling customers, or I'm selling internally, or I'm selling the board, or I'm selling investors. Like, you're always selling. And what Tom does in his book,
I have it right here, like Tom Bolzano. Yeah.
Built Not Born, right? So my point in it, he gets out of theoretical. Tom is kind of more of a nuts and bolts, get into the, and by the way, he built his own company selling himself. So he's really good and comfortable in the selling world. He sold his first 300 customers, and it took him 4 years to do it. But I think it's a great book to understand what it takes to be successful. And rather than the plethora of selling books that are out there, from my perspective, I think it's broadening yourself beyond that. And I think Tom is successful in every right. He's worth $7 billion. He's built and sold multiple companies, but Paychex is his original one, where he is the consummate sales guy. He sold his first 300 customers. It took him 4 years. So I think reading and understanding beyond just sales, I think that's where Built Not Born is probably going to be really helpful for your listeners.
Totally. And I think, like, I don't know, a lot of times, I think reps, they look for like these sort of books written by other sales reps, but I always recommend them. Like, if you read a book written by a billionaire, like, I think you're going to get a lot more valuable first principle thinking than others. And like, even me, like, I'm not running a venture-backed company, but I benefited a lot when I listened to Elon Musk's book and even Steve Jobs' book, because at some level they talk about selling and marketing and and first principle thinking, which I think is the most important thing. I think there's a lot of tactical stuff you can always learn, but if you learn the first principles of like being a savvy and acute business person, then like you're always going to benefit from that, right?
Well, exactly. And if you think about it, a sales rep, like, so if it's Omar's territory, you should be running that territory like it's your business. It's Omar's company. It's your business. So why not read something like Built Not Born with a guy that made a $7 billion, a business that's now worth well over 40 billion, but he's made 7 billion for himself.
100. No, I completely agree. And I think when you elevate your level of thinking to that, then you kind of expand the way you think about things versus like more like acute and sort of short-term thinking,
Yeah. Tactical thinking is, I'm a sales rep and I got to hit a quota. Bigger thinking is, this is my business. How am I going to run my business with my customers and the products that I have?
Exactly. Well, Tom, thank you so much for like coming on the show. And I think best place to connect and follow you online is that you are on LinkedIn and active on there, correct?
I am. So Tom O'Neill, Oneill, or you can just go to our website, www. Either way.
Awesome. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. And for those who are listening, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show and give us 5 stars and a review. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of The State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has an executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.